Pipe Network presents.
On this episode of Season 4, Let's Talk.
When you make a mental image into your head, that speeds up the process of creating, and at the same time you'll get psyched up kasi this is what I want. I done it in just a small amount of time. That builds up your confidence, and it also works well, or it also is a good thing for your subject, because your subject would probably think that, oh, okay, he has the shot in mind, he's got it, so he must be very good.
On behalf of my guest here in the Rajiv Show, we would like to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Hey folks, welcome back to the Rajiv Show, and I'm your host Rajiv Doreswamy, and this show aims to help reach out to those who are currently struggling in life and to remind you that life is indeed beautiful when you're inspired to make it your own. Folks, my guest today is a father and a photographer and a friend of mine from the Podcast PH community, uh, Mr. Michael Ray Villar. Hey pal, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, Rajiv? I'm good. How about you?
Staying productive as usual. Anyway, let's get
Nice.
into the meat and bones of this conversation. Could you give my listeners uh, a small background about yourself?
A small background, sige. As you've mentioned, I am a photographer, and I'm also a father. I'm also a husband. And aside from those things, I'm also an HR trainer, and I am a podcaster, just like you. Yes.
Anyway, let's get
Sige.
into the questions. Let's go back in the past. If you and I were high schools, who were you in high school? Are you the guy who's sitting in classroom, an introverted person, or are you a sports guy, or are you the popular guy in school? If you and I were classmates,
Okay. To answer that one, number one, I am not that popular. Number two, I am a sporty one. And number three, I am not an introvert. I am an extrovert, as in. So if we would be classmates in high school, I would probably be the one like answering teachers' questions, or hanging out with pals, or playing different sports. So just like in high school, I actually played um, multiple sports, but I became a varsity player for basketball during my third and fourth years. So
wow,
there,
that's
yeah,
intense. Sports. That's just an intense
yeah.
opener right
Hence,
there.
hence, hence the sports podcast that I have, which is the
Huh.
Sidelines PH. If your listeners are, would want to check out some sports podcast, yeah, maybe do check out the Sidelines PH. Wow, immediate plugging, no?
Bilis nga eh. Uh,
Bilis.
Connecting to sports, the next question is, who's your greatest motivator and why? I'm sure you're gonna say a sports person or a philosopher. Who's your greatest motivator?
No, it's probably my wife. Probably because when you get married, a lot of things, or a lot of thoughts will become of a different perspective. Like
Mhm.
everything would just change, just change. It's like when you were single and you were young, you're like, oh, what will I do next? What will I do next? Or what would make me happy next? But once you're married and when you have kids, then it's just a matter of what would be the the next best thing for my family moving forward, no? So it's not just about you, it's about the whole family. And why I say my wife is the biggest motivator, um I think that's one of her traits, like seeing her work hard and seeing her, or experiencing how she is very supportive of me in all of my endeavors. It's like, okay, I really have to succeed because she is giving me a lot of support and she's doing her job as well. So yon, I think biggest motivator for me would be my wife. And of course my kids.
That's
But
amazing.
but but but
Mm,
but if you're going to ask me about a motivator from a different person,
mm.
let's say like a personality, probably would be Kobe Bryant. I'm a Kobe fan, and the mentality that he brings, that Mamba mentality, it actually, how do you call this? It actually applies to not just in sports,
Mm.
but in different facets of life. It's like whatever you do, if you have that Mamba mentality, then you are, what do you call this? You would be well equipped, or you'll have a greater chance of making it to whatever goal you have set for yourself. So there. Kobe Bryant, Kobe. Hmm.
The next question that follows the motivator uh, is what made you who you are? That's a little bit deeper.
Yeah, that's so deep. What made me who I am? Probably it's a trait that I do things rather than overthink it. Like, of course, you have to put in some thought on it and you have to really discern. But I'm a type of person that would not want what ifs. Just to give you a background, I have worked for a corporate bank for 5 years prior to me switching to photography, and at that time, there were a lot of factors going into it, and with consultation from my wife, from my parents, but ultimately, uh, it's just a matter of saying, if I have a chance to build a business on my own, like be my own boss, and not be an employee for the rest of my life, then I have to grab that chance. So yeah, at least there are no what ifs during that time. And well, here I am. I'm still alive. I'm still surviving. So, yan. Probably it's a good decision then. Yan.
Kind of connects back to the Mambo mentality.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, correct. Kasi yun nga, you don't want to live in what ifs. Life's very short, and you have to do stuff that you would want to do. And before you know it, kasi you're not that young anymore. Like for example,
Mm.
me, I'm very old, but well, old my standards, but ayun, I could say I could have done some things better during my younger years, but ayun, siguro mga 70% naman nagawa ko naman siya. So, yun, I'd rather do than overthink and, live with the what ifs.
Interesting. Speaking of what ifs, the next question is connected to the word what ifs. Is that if today
Hmm.
was yesterday, what would you keep and what would you let go of? This is more on the present side. So if
If
you were
this
to look
was,
back,
if
yeah,
ang hirap naman ng question mo, yesterday,
yeah,
ah, parang wala. I don't know. Probably my decision or my answer is being clouded by this shroud called COVID-19. It's like every day, we're just here every day eh. So, parang wala masyadong action. So, sige, ganito lang. If I have, or if there was something that I would want to be taken out from yesterday and today, it's this COVID thing. Yeah, yung COVID thing.
interesting. And let's look forward to the future. What are your
Sige.
thoughts for your future and for the future now that we look like we are transitioning? Of course, after the pandemic, things will never be as normal as they are. It's gonna
That
be
is true. That is
it's a
true.
new future. So let's start
Yes.
first with you. What are your thoughts for your future, and what are your thoughts for the future?
Okay, my thoughts for the future. That's a very good question. Personally, for me, it's a matter of um, looking for other ways to earn. For your listeners who do not know me, the line of photography that that I have been is through weddings. So weddings are actually very affected by this pandemic, and while photographers are actually essential in any wedding, the mere fact of thinking about getting wed during this time is such a scary thing. So hindi mo talaga masabi talaga, like with all the quarantine issues and of course the health issues as well. So I think in the future hindi lang future, actually I'm starting right now. I really need to tap into other um resources or other means to earn. And if there's one thing that we've learned during this pandemic is that online is the way to go. Like everything would be online, like every like example, your payments, online classes, virtual workshops. So everything is online right now. So we really have to leverage on that technology.
Mm.
And I don't see the wedding industry getting back to where it was pre-pandemic in probably 3-4 years time. Wala, hindi talaga babalik yan. So, yun, finding new ways of earning at the same time, you know, trying to find a way for our industry to thrive as well during this time. Um, what else? For the future,
Mm.
well, connected naman siya dun sa sinabi ko na that online is the way to go. Like a lot of people would be stuck in their homes and will probably some offices or some companies would probably consider having people at their homes as their workplace. If you have that one, then it saves you a lot of it saves a lot of resources, time, your energy, so I think in the future and everything would be online. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. And this is my favorite segment of this interview. This is
Yeah.
the segment called "What Inspires You." So just let me know when you're ready to go.
All right. So what inspires me or who inspires me? Sige. Number one would be Elon Musk. He's such a visionary. He's so forward thinking. If you don't know Elon Musk, he heads SpaceX. He heads the Boring Company. He heads Tesla. So all of these technological advancements he foresaw, or he was so forward thinking, and it's actually nice that he was able to experiment and do stuff and actually succeed in them. So I think that's one of the main inspirations that I have. Another group of people that I am inspired by is my mentors in photography, Toto and Nicolai Villaruel. So they are wedding photographers and they took me under their wing. I think the main motivation that they're giving me is that you never hold back in giving back to others. So what I meant was um, they were so open in sharing their tips, their tricks, their techniques, all of the knowledge that they have when it comes to wedding photography. And the good thing about it is that number one, you get to create new stuff because you're forced to, because you gave something away. So you have to create new stuff. And then second is, uh, it's not just for the betterment of them, but it's for the betterment of the whole industry. So as the industry gains these knowledge, then their standards get up, and we'll be able to have that front to other people who are non-photographers that hey, we have high standards, or we're actually very good in what we do. So, ayun. And I think those are the two main people that I am inspired by.
Awesome. My next question is, um, do you have a motivational quote or a philosophy that you live by on everyday basis, or a quotation by a famous philosopher or a regular folk that you wake up to and say, okay, I'm gonna conquer the day with this, you know?
Mm. Uh, I can name a lot, but probably I'll just name two or three or two. Number one is life is too simple to complicate. We've been trying to complicate other stuff when all of the answers to our questions would probably be the simplest ones. Our happiness, it can be achieved through simple means. Like for example, here in what this pandemic has done, parang you were able to survive not going out and partying or going to the movies or eating out. It's like, you know, yeah, you just have to be simple, and it actually shows in my work as well, in my art. It's like I always tell people that the simpler the better. You don't have to overproduce things just to have good stuff. So I think that's one of the motivational quotes that I hang into. And another is from I heard this from an interview of mine, uh, with an athlete, with a gymnast. It says that it doesn't matter when you start. What's important is start and finish. Yun. So just like what I was saying a while ago in terms of doing it, you just have to start. Parang you can go on from there. But one of the hardest things to do is to actually start something. And parang ako, I just suggest that no, you start doing things, and then of course you've planned for it, but um there you cannot plan for everything naman so you just have to roll with the punches once you're there. So yun, those two.
Oh, that's really powerful stuff. That
Mm.
is powerful stuff. Um, Before we get into our interesting segment, we'll be right back, folks. This episode is sponsored by Dulce House, the online shop for your guilty pleasure. Use the promo code PIPE to buy chocolate chip cookies, Oreo cheesecake cookies, and other baking goodies. The promo code is PIPE. Go to the link in the description to find out more.
Hello, I'm Rachel,
And I'm Sting Lacson,
the host of the Couch Tomato podcast.
Catch new episodes every Monday,
Usually,
or follow us on Facebook and Twitter at The Couch Tomato.
to get updates and teasers on what we're watching and reviewing next. The
The
Couch
Couch
Tomato
Tomato
podcast. We do the reviews
So you don't need to watch it.
if you don't want to.
Welcome back, folks. My guest today again is Michael Ray Villar, a phenomenal photographer and a father, and of course, a great husband to his family. We're gonna get
Yun.
into art segments. I know he mentioned earlier in our that he is a wedding photographer. So
Yes.
the first question that I got from Singh is, how long does it take for an amateur? Because I think I dabbled in photography also a long time ago. I mean, how long does it take for an amateur to learn with the basic set, the standard stuff about photography?
Ah, learning it is quick. Mastering it is, well, I haven't mastered it. Yeah. So it's an ongoing process. But when it comes to learning, I think you can learn it in probably in 6 months' time. Like all of the things that you need to do when it comes to wedding photography, because it's not just about taking photos. It's not just
Hmm.
about that. It's like um how do you build rapport with your clients? How do you um, get a genuine reaction from them?
Mm,
Where which angle would you want to go to when you're faced with this situation? A lot of it is actually based on experience. So if you'll be shooting weddings for about 6 months straight, then you'll probably get it. You'll probably learn it talaga. But mastering it, it's really hard. Like ako, I've been shooting or I've been doing this wedding photography since 2012. So that's 8 years. It's 8 years. So I can't still consider myself as master or very good at it, but I'm still constantly learning. But yeah, I think if you put effort, like not just, of course you really need to have experience in the field, like in a wedding itself, but there are things that you can work on which is not in the field. Like for example, if you want to work on portraits, then you can probably just ask someone, a friend of yours or whoever is very good at or who would want to have their portraits taken, then you can practice with that one. If you want to take photos of like the inanimate objects, like the wedding details,
mm.
then you can probably have cards there, or probably borrow a wedding ring or whatever, and then you can practice all of those. So there are things that are in your control that you can really practice, and that speeds up the learning curve. But ultimately it all boils down to having your reps, having that experience in weddings. I am very fortunate enough that when I started weddings
Mm.
or wedding photography, I was part of a team that like I told you a while ago, it was Toto Villaruel, Nicolai Belicor. They took me under their wing, so all of their weddings I was there. So
Mm.
I was their shooter. So that gave me experience, and that experience translated into me opening up my own studio. So yun, I think 6 months to a year probably to learn it.
What fascinates me in photography, I mean, unlike arts where in my previous episodes where I talk about drawing and making comics, the artistry. The next question that I got is going to be a little bit interesting, is more deep, because when you think of a painter, or think of an artist, when they sculpt and they create, there's that artistry based on forms and structures, and all those tiny details. In
Yeah.
photography, what is that that important thing that makes one photographer stand out in terms of details? uh, like when you're there are a lot of artists that to create, they create there are certain artists who create certain niche. There, if we think of superheroes, there are a lot of artists that can make a male model superhero like character, and then their weaknesses is, of course, the others, like female proportions or perspective. But they have that eye for the tiny detail. What makes one photographer different uh, to another photographer in terms of that artistry?
Wow, what a loaded question, my friend. Okay, how do I tackle this one? Sige. um okay, in photography there are rules, right? There are rules, and those rules are actually meant to be broken. So a lot of photographers follow the rules and break them. So in terms of the form, in terms of the details, um, I think it's much like this is from coming from my personal experience and my personal views. The art itself, you can do whatever you want with it. It's just that number one, it should evoke something, or it should have an emotional connection with your audience. That's number one. And number two, um, this is especially true when it comes to weddings, wedding photography, is that you are not getting paid to create, things, or create new things. You are paid for consistency. So I think in terms of photography, in terms of wedding photography, you will be based, or you will be judged if you're a good photographer or not if your work is very consistent, in terms of like colors, in terms of your compositions, in terms of the feel of your photos. I think if you I'm not yet in that level, but if I see a photo, a wedding photo, analyze its colors, its all of the elements in that photo, I could say that this photo is more like this photographer. So yeah, it's more of the consistency, because when you keep seeing that kind of work, if your work is that consistent, then people would feel, or people would think of your work as, okay, I'm being bombarded with this type of work. It must be this type of person that's doing this type of work. So yeah, for me, it's about evoking passion, or sorry, evoking feelings, or it has to have that personal connection with your subject, or with your audience. And number two is being consistent.
My next question is, this is very, I'm sure this is going to be a short answer, is that before you make the shot, as they call it, I'm sure that's what they call it in the photography world, the language. Before you make the shot, do you have the shot in your head when you create it, or it's improvised?
Ah, that's ako personally. I have a specific shot in mind. I know exactly what I want from that shot, so that when I take it, it's just one take. I'll be satisfied with that one. Maybe two, just so the if there's a blink or a blur. But I think that's what separates good photographers from the not yet there photographers. Of course, it all boils down to, again, experience, and through that experience, certain situations, I already know what I would want to do in
Mhm.
those types of situations. Like for example, the we have a very dark lit room, when the window light is just one tiny, or no, not tiny, but a big light in the middle. So automatically, I would want a shot that has a silhouette of that person. That's one. So I position him there, I position the subject over there, and take the shot, then I'm done. Then next layout, I want something that would bring in light to the face. So I'll take an angle that would show him or her or the subject, with light from the window touching her face or his face. So no, those kinds you develop when you're immersed into the craft. But I think when you make a mental image into your head, that speeds up the process of creating. And at the same time, you'll get psyched up, kasi this is what I want. I done it in just a small amount of time. That builds up your confidence, and it also works well, or it also is a good thing for your subject, because your subject would probably think that, oh, okay, he has the shot in mind, he's got it, so he must be very good. So yun, yes, there is a shot in mind whenever I before I click the shutter button.
Oh, that's really a fascinating. I mean, now I'm a big believer of photography being an art. It is a
Yeah,
thing. The
yeah, but
misconception.
because
Hmm,
yeah, yeah, Joe, you were saying the
yeah.
misconception is that, well, it goes to all artists actually, bro. It's
Hmm.
like, my photographer ka lang, nagkiklik lang yan, nagkiklik lang. But
That's
no,
what. Yeah, I was gonna say that
diba?
in English.
There's a lot of things that's happening for you to be able to click that shutter, like, the settings of your camera,
Hmm.
the lighting, the face, like which angles works best, what type of light would probably be good in this type of situation. There's a lot of factors, and all of the other people would think is that you're just clicking the shutter.
Hmm.
And I think this is probably it goes back to our what do you call this, our upbringing, not just us, no, but
Hmm.
the generation before us and before us, like, you know, being in, if you are a doctor, you're a professional. If you're an architect, you're a professional.
Hmm.
If you're an engineer, you are a professional. But if you're you're a musician, or you are an athlete, or you're a photographer, or you're a painter, parang wala eh. We don't get that much respect from
Hmm.
other people. The good thing here is that a lot of this has been um, proven by the multiple intelligences theory. And it's not actually a theory right now for me. It really is what's happening in this world right now. Is that a lot of people would be very intelligent, not just in the ways that society dictates it to be. For
Hmm.
example, you are considered intelligent if you're good at speaking in English.
Hmm.
You are intelligent if you are good in science. You're intelligent if you could memorize the quadratic equation, what have you, right? But
Hmm.
there are other multiple intelligences, like for example, Kobe Bryant. All you see is a person pulling up for a shot,
Hmm.
right? But in that split second, he knows when to stop. He knows when to fake. He knows how high he has to launch the ball. He knows how much lift or how much power he has to put the ball in the hoop. There are a lot of things like that. And part of the things that multiple intelligences take up is that what, for example, like athletes like Kobe Bryant, he's very intelligent physically, right?
Hmm.
Physically intelligent. But if you are not physically intelligent, then whatever practice you do, how many hours you put into it, you will never be on the same level as Kobe Bryant, because you are not as intelligent as him in terms of physicality. Yes?
Hmm. I do agree with that.
Yes, so that's the point. So basically other people who are not really that what do you call this? Not really in the same level as artists, they just think that, the painter is just painting strokes. Eh
Hmm.
ako nga stick figure nga lang, di ako makapag-drawing ng maayos. 'Di ba? So it takes a certain intelligence to do things that all other people are doing. So ayun, I just wanted to get that out of, out of my system, that, you really have to have certain respect for all of the professions that all people have. So yun, that makes sense.
It does. It does. It looks like this conversation has led to some form of photography revolution. I mean, artist revolution towards the next
Yeah.
generations. Because I
Yes,
mean,
yes, yes,
I'm
of
sure
course.
you agree with me that the young kids nowadays, they
Mm.
um a lot of them are sharing a lot of their thoughts about artists not getting paid, and that misconception. But
Yes,
but
yes.
then if we look at the real world, we look at things that are happening. Uh, the art itself looks like it's covering. It's just that I guess the geography plays a big dynamic. When you're in America and you're a young artist, you have a 90% chance, if if you have that tenacity. But of course, in the Philippines, where the regulations are much different, the standards, the thinking, as you mentioned earlier, it's a lot more. Uh, it's a lot more downgrading from a
Yeah,
kid who grows up watching
yeah,
Kobe Bryant or watching these artists, and then they want to emulate, but then the society does not allow them. It's pretty saddening, and I'm sure you agree with
yeah.
me.
Yes,
And
it is. It is. Can I add other things to that one?
yeah, sure.
Okay. While it is a cultural thing, a lot of it boils down to how our parents or the parents of this generation has brought us up, and I'm thinking that it's actually not also their fault,
Hmm.
because probably that's the way they were also brought up, and they were brought up in that period of um two world wars, where everything was washed out, everything was spilled out of the drain, and
Mm,
you really have, their parents and my parents, or our parents, they had to work hard in
mm.
order to give
Make
us a
ends meet.
better life. They make ends meet or whatever. So um while it's not their fault, you're correct, it's just saddening that a lot of it there's still a stigma when it comes to being an artist. But ako kasi pinaka pet peeve ko yan when parents would want to, parents enroll their kids in violin, in guitar lessons, in music,
Mm,
in piano lessons, or they make them do ballet or whatever. But when it comes to a time that they would want to make it at a career,
mm,
it's like it's frowned upon, no? It's frowned upon. So yun, just wanted to, bring it to light
mm,
para naman, it's while it may not be entirely their fault,
mm.
it really plays a lot in our culture, in our society. So yun, and hopefully what you have said a while ago is that a lot of students, sorry, a lot of young people right now have been, expressing all of these stuff, which is um making the art, or making our industry a better place,
Mm.
and it would make our industry thrive more. And parang just to elevate the standards, and the standards of not just the work itself, but of course the living standards of living of all of the artists here in the Philippines, most especially.
One thing interesting though that took my mind when you mentioned enrolling into art programs and stuff like that. You might debate me on this, uh, and I find this interesting and fascinating. Is sometimes, personally, I feel that the standardization of teaching someone to do something that they love is sometimes it's sometimes much more challenging to the person who's learning it. Let me explain what I mean by that. What I mean is that when, for me, my earlier years, some people may not know that I was actually enrolled in playing violin, and
Mm-hmm.
of course, uh, I come from a musical background. My dad is a composer, and my mom is a phenomenal soprano singer who can sing top end. And
Mm-hmm.
it was me and my sister who was enrolled in these violin classes. My sister managed to get through the system, and for me, I didn't really have uh, I didn't have the groove for it. It's funny. Few years after that, I
Mm-hmm.
think I was around 3 years old or 4 years old. I was young. I was a small kid. I was more fascinated in drawing, sketching out. I don't think some of the people remember doing this, but probably they were experimental, where they put the coin behind the paper and then they trace it out. That was my
Mm-hmm.
very first fascination of art. That was what
I
got
see.
me, because someone introduced the idea, like you put a 2 peso coin or thing underneath the paper, and then you shade it out like you're playing lotto, and then
Yeah.
the tracing of the coin. um, I found it fascinating, and that's where my fascination for arts began. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, it, the way I see it, that how people standardize the way things are in terms of systems, I often wish that the system would change. And my thoughts towards that is, um, it's fair to say that technology has advanced, and then things
Yes.
have grown. Everything has grown. We used to have telephones that you can't even take far out into the garage when you need an important call, and then you need to go fix
Mm-hmm.
some things. But now
Yes.
you have a phone that's the size of your palm, and then you eventually it will get smaller or it will get bigger depending on who the creators are. And you know technology is advancing, and then cars, and we got all these other good stuff around our homes. It's funny how we see things change, but the one thing that remains consistent is the system, and it's one thing that I always hated about society, basically of all societies, not just Philippines, is that system that integrates people to not enjoy what they do, and develop that passion and that fire to create what they. It's always a bit challenging for people like me, because one is, when I was learning how to play violin, of course I did. Early at that time, we never had YouTube, and
Mm-hmm.
probably I would have never continued, because one is that it was not really a part of who I was, I think, at that time. But then,
Mm-hmm.
of course, going forward into my lost years, where I found that when at that time I was exposed to YouTube, and learning it was much more easier. I mean, it was much more easier than paying someone, $50 for the lesson, and then only to not to in the end, throw it up. You know, I don't know if you got the message there. Is that somehow,
Mm-hmm.
my point being is that I wish that the system would change in such a way that it would accommodate learners in every form of learning, be it may all these multiple intelligence that you've mentioned. I mean, I
Yeah.
wish there's going to be a change that could somehow, you know bring a revolutionary ideology, or something that could bring a fashion, that passion for creating, because in this world, um, when you do something, you 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 learn it, but the challenge is learning it from the right person, I guess. I mean, I'm not saying that, I'm not shitting on anyone's thing, um, any of the teachers. There are some good teachers out there who are still integrating the same system over and over again, but they're doing it in unique ways. And there are some who are average teachers, and then they somehow have this bad habit of, they're so bad enough, and then they're following a bad system, and then they're trying to chug out bad students. It kind of brings that, it, I only hope that, people who are listening, they probably initiate change in the educational system, in terms of passion and photography. And yeah, that's one thing I've always wanted to sing. For me, I have a blog which is going to be contradicting to sing. And I'm sorry I drifted off into this conversation, because in this blog the title says, don't follow your passion. But my intention of that is not the title itself. Some people read the title for sing, but not the content. Is that,
Mm-hmm.
of course, when you get into the real world, there are things that you fight for, as you mentioned, as a family man yourself. Your perspective changed, you know uh,
Yes.
when you're single, you mentioned, when you're single, you have the ability to do anything you want, and get away with it. But
Yes.
when you're settling down, reality hits. Bills come
Mm-hmm.
in, and then, and somehow the balance of passion and the drive that makes you do what you do and makes you who you are deteriorates if you don't know how to balance that, is the thing. And for me, the proud moment of the fact that you're still doing what you do, and you're still doing what you love, and you're still balancing that, the family orientation there, it's kind of phenomenal. It's kind of major respect. My major respect, and my major respect to you, because there's a handful of people who can do that and still keep their head. uh,
You thought I'm keeping my head right now? Joke lang, joke lang.
but there are a handful of people who, like my father, also, he loves what he does, but he's still keeping that fire. He's keeping that fire strong, and that's an interesting thing. And to connect everything that I've said earlier, before I made this conversation, is that I wish we have a system that would integrate passions in such a way that it won't stigmatize it, or I don't know if that's the word. Yeah, I guess I'll go with that word since no one's correcting me. Uh,
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. I wish we have a community of people who understand that passions are created, and that's where thing. And of course, to initiate that change for the arts is that hopefully, it would be interesting to hear that the system, once we have that established change in system where the community changes, the system as well should at least adapt or grow in such a way that these artists also need to get paid. Basically, that's my short thing, and get paid in such a way that they can use that as fuel to help them push them to the next level and to bring them to the next level until, of course. But then that's just an ideology beyond dreams, unless hopefully someone who's listening would, again, create that, bring that revolution of creativity into our country, and that would be a phenomenal scene for us who are getting old.
Mhm.
That will be an interesting dynamic.
Okay, let me add to what you have just said. Number one, there are some institutions right now who has fully embraced that you cannot really teach certain ways to different people, like different strokes for different folks, but at the same time it's different attacks or different angles when it comes to teaching
Mm,
other or some of the arts programs that we know of. And I actually came from from the La Salle College of St. Benilde, and I would attest to what they are doing right now. They're bringing in practitioners and real life practitioners
mm,
to share their experiences to the students in the hopes of, um, leveling up the current industry that we have in. So, with you saying that there should be someone who would become, agents of change in the system. I think that there are some right now. It's
mm,
just a matter of trying to replicate all of these things so that it would be caught. The whole countrywide or the whole world would do the same thing. Another thing that I would like to add is for me. If you feel or if you thought that my passion is not dying, it is dying. It dies. I mean, it continues to die, and it it would be resurfaced again.
mm,
So probably one of the things you actually said it a while ago, and this pandemic really hits hard. It
mm,
really hits hard. Like for you not to be able to practice your passion,
mm,
and it's like and all of these negative things that come, the negative news, the sense of hopelessness. It really takes a toll in your passion in that fire. But as you said a while ago, you'd really need to have a community of artists, a community of people. Some of the things or some of the people that you would want to go run or you would want to run to when the going gets tough, when it comes to your passion, or if you're losing your sanity. And I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of people like that, like
mm,
we as a team, in our team, in our photography team, in our sub teams, and also from different genres. Like I have a friend who is a musician, and they're very heavily hit by this pandemic because no gigs, no money, right?
mm,
So it's just a matter of having the right persons. You have to surround yourself with the right persons who would keep you in check, who would check up on you when
mm.
you're feeling down or you're not feeling that well. So I think you really have to surround yourself with those kinds of people. Good. Just wanted to add to that.
But that's a fascinating. This is amazing conversation. We dug deep into um, adding revolution to art, because art needs. I think it's a high time that art needs its own highlight.
Yes, yes, that's correct. And art, it's not just mainstream art, and not just the mainstream names, like not just the mainstream production companies. Dapat lahat talaga nabigyan din talaga ng certain spotlight. So yeah, there.
Anyway, this
Yun.
before we end our conversation, if anyone is interested in connecting with you, how do they find you on social media?
Oh, okay. You can follow me on at MR Villar Snaps. That's my Instagram handle. If you want to follow my wedding work or my commission works, it's at Canary Studios PH. So that's our Instagram handles. You can also find us on Facebook. That's Canary Studios PH. You just search it there. Or you can go to my website at mrvillar.com. Yeah. But
Awesome.
I'm mostly online I'm mostly responsive in IG. So that's at MR Villar Snaps.
Awesome. Awesome. With that in mind, we had a productive conversation, and it has been, I guess the word of the day is going to be artistic. It's been an
Yeah.
artistic conversation, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about stuff that I could learn from you in terms of arts and how we could deconstruct that. I'd hope we'd have another few more episodes or a few more
Yeah,
seasons.
sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
Thanks, Rajiv, for inviting me in your show.
yeah. Thank you so much for being in the show as well. I mean,
No? This is one
uh,
of the moments wherein I realized that I made it because I'm in the Rajiv show. Yes.
oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Anyway, for those who are tuning in, I hope you picked up a lot of things. I hope you picked up a lot of amazing stuff. With that in mind, I will see you in the next episode. Cheers, folks.
Cheers, man. Cheers.